Hello, my name is Gennaro Cataldo. I'm here once again with another episode of Revere Another Time, and I'm with my good friend Don Zolo, who in the past we've talked about various war heroes that Don has done some research on. But today, what are we going to talk about, Don?
Well, besides talking about people, I think we should talk about the times, what it was like to live in Revere here in 1944.
Okay, so war breaks out then.
Right.
The war is over, near over.
All right.
So then what role do the civilians play in all of this?
Well, as soon as hostilities broke out, civilians were faced with a tremendous amount of challenges, tremendous amount of fear, tremendous amount of anxiety, and the government had to rally the people together. Now, when you're in a war, you need resources, you need plenty of them. So the government had to ration certain resources that we would have. And what they did was they drove home the point to the people that this war depends on our lives, depend on it, and our way of life depends on it. And the people realized this, and as a result, the government came out with various ways to bring people into the war so that it became a common goal where everyone worked together for one purpose, that was to win the war. So from there is where you get into rationing and so forth and so on.
Well, I certainly remember my parents talking about rationing and such, the hard times that they had it. But what was rationed?
Oh, there were a number of things that were rationed: coffee, sugar, clothing, fuel oil, gasoline. As a matter of fact, if you recall seeing some of those Godfather movies, Godfather 1, there's a scene in there, I believe it was the cannoli scene, if you recall that one, where you get a glimpse of the front windshield, and on the front windshield you'll see a sticker, and it has the letter A on it. So they had A stickers and B stickers. One went on odd days, one went on even days to get gasoline. The only exceptions were if you were employed in a defense-related industry. Let's say you lived in Revere and you had to travel every day to Weymouth to work for the Navy. You could get gas probably every day because you were contributing to the war effort. Lumber was another thing that was a shortage. My father, who was a carpenter, often told me about it, and he worked for a while over at the Navy base. They used to ship these big, huge locomotives on ships to Europe, and they used to brace them with big 4x6 timbers. And my father said, boy, he said they had such beautiful lumber. He said, nobody could get it. He said, but the military had tons of it because they needed it for a just cause.
Right. So there was a lot of change in our parents' lives.
There was a tremendous amount of change. People.
How did they respond to this?
Well, believe it or not, looking at it and retrospectively, their response was as true patriotic champions. Everybody contributed, everybody gave in, everybody sacrificed. And they all knew that this meant to them that it could either be their lives or their way of life, and they just weren't about to give that up or lose it. And also, war did boost the economy. So everybody got a job who didn't have a job from the Depression. And that was another aspect of the whole rationing bit, was that the government, through the Office of Price Administration, which is better known as the OPA, set out a certain number of things that you could only buy limited amounts of, or you could not buy at all. And sometimes they had what they called Meatless Tuesdays, where you could go out to a restaurant, the restaurants could not serve meat. So everything had to be controlled. Supply and demand was controlled, and when they controlled supply and demand, they controlled the economy. Obviously, this was not an economy that if you were a free trader that you were going to like, but it had to be done, and by doing that, they contributed tremendously to winning this war.
In order to control the purchasing of the various commodities and so forth,
How do they ration?
How do they do it? How do they ration that?
It's very interesting. You went to a central location. Usually they were in schools, and usually one person from the family went, and you registered for your coupon books. Now, they would give you so many coupons, and then a month, 2 months later, whatever it was, when you ran out, you went back to the same location. As I said, in Revere, a lot of them were located in our public schools. So people had to take a ration book with them, and if they went down to the store, they had a family of 3, they assumed that maybe a family of 3 could have no more than maybe 5 pounds of hamburger a week. So you were limited. You couldn't go in there and say, oh, I want to buy a 10-pound pack because I'm having the folks over for a barbecue. It wasn't going to happen.
Now, this must have spurred an underground type of economy also.
There was an underground type of an economy. That's a nice way of putting it. Supposedly, some underworld elements printed up their own coupons and sold them. A lot of them printed up their own gasoline rationing stamps and used those, or they would sell them. So there was an alternative economy if you want.
What about food? Were they able to get food that way too?
Well, if you had a coupon book, it did not guarantee the availability of the substance that was on the coupon. What it guaranteed was that whatever was on that coupon, if they had it, you could get that much. Shoes, for example, were rationed. If you look at the shoe ad I have here from Broadway Family Shoe, those of you who don't remember, roughly between Park Avenue and where the old Broadway department store was, which was opposite of Winthrop Ave, you had the Broadway Family Shoe Store. It had been a fixture on Broadway for years and years. In fact, they were in business till I think the 80s, and I'm going to say probably for the last 15 or 20 years they were owned by the Clark family. Most of us will remember it.
The Clark family, the Clark shoes today?
No.
Oh,
Clark,
okay.
Paul Clark was in our class.
Oh, yes.
His
Okay.
family owned
I
it.
got you.
But if you remember, I can remember going in there in the 40s and 50s. It was so cool to stick your feet in the X-ray machine
Right.
to see how the shoes fit.
Remember it so well.
It was so cool. So somebody said, "Hey, this is not good for your health," so they got rid of the X-ray machines. They didn't have them. But anyways, if you look at the ad that I have from the Revere Journal, which I believe was January 27th. They're showing ladies' shoes for $3 a pair. Of course, the prices are fantastic.
Right.
You can't beat the prices. But if you notice, those of you who are watching on the monitor here, if you see the ad about 3/4 of the way down on the right, you'll notice an arrow pointing to a statement. The statement basically is saying, we have a limited supply of shoes that we can sell for $3 a pair without a coupon, but it's only for 2 weeks, so get them while they last. So every now and then they had what we call these open dates, where you could go out and buy something without a coupon, and it was like having a giant sale. People responded to it.
Somehow I also remember, Don, in the past that my father would collect cans.
Yes.
Tomato cans.
Yes. What happened was, in fact, I remember doing that as well. As a very young child, they needed tin cans. So back then there was no aluminum cans. They were all tin, and they were pretty sturdy cans.
Yeah.
So whenever you used a can in your house, the procedure was to take it, wash it out, put it on the floor and step on it with your foot to flatten it out. I can remember as a very young child, my brother and I used to love to do that. It would help my father flatten out the cans. Once a month, the Journal would run an announcement that said, can pickup next week. So if you were to put your trash out on a Monday, you put out your cans in a separate pile. You put out your trash on a Wednesday, you put out your cans in a separate pile. When the truck came around, they had a separate container in which they would take those tin cans and they would put them in there. So those cans were recycled. You probably used the same can several times. There is, however, an alternative story here that I found, which I don't know if I'm going to put too much truth into it. I'm calling it anecdotal research, okay? There was a website that said this was really sort of like a scam that the government ran. It was their way of getting you into the war game so that everybody was really on the team. And they said that none of that stuff ever got used. But I tend to doubt it because I also seen pictures of literally trainloads of used cans going to a recycle facility.
Yes.
So you can take one side with a grain of salt, and the other side I think you have to take far more seriously.
I also heard Hollywood got involved with this recycling program.
Yes, they did. They'll show you on the monitor here. There's a picture of a lovely Hollywood star named Rita Hayworth, who most of the great generation would obviously remember right away. And there's a picture of her sitting on the backside of her car, which is a 1941 Lincoln Continental. And she had given up her bumpers for the scrap drive. And they used this, a lot of Hollywood personalities got involved in helping out, especially in terms of bond drives. They needed money, so they would come and sell war bonds. But this gives you an idea of just what it was like as to how much they needed. In fact, there was a point in time when people took their bumpers off and put them on the scrap heap, so to speak, and they took a 2x4 and put that on their car as a bumper.
Fantastic. I mean, it's unbelievable. I also remember, Don, I don't know if this had anything to do with the war effort or not, wrapping up paper. We used to save all of our newspapers. Was that a scam also?
No,
was that part of the war effort?
No, again, a lot of that paper was recycled and reused. Yes, yeah. In fact, I remember they used to have paper drives, and that was another thing. You know, they would say this week, put out your pet newspapers. We're going to recycle those.
Don, fantastic information. It really brings a lot of the things in the past that we lived through home as to why it was being done. I want to thank you again so much for participating in this program. We're going to be back with another program on Revere another time. But in the meantime, if you want to get any further information about some of these interesting stories, the Revere Society for Cultural and Historic Preservation across from the Immaculate Conception Church has a wealth of information, very interesting place to visit, and I think that you would like to see that at some point in time. Everybody from Revere should visit there at least once. Don, thank you again, and we look forward to our next episode. Thank you.
You're welcome.